So I've been wanting to make this video for a while because every day there's a new person who has their interest piqued by a fighting game, whether that be Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, etc. There's an array of fighting games out there that will surely ignite one's curiosity. And if you're anything like myself, you'll tell yourself that you want to get good at said fighting game. But a factor you might ignore or just may not be privy to in the beginning is that fighting games can be somewhat stressful, and depending on what kind of mentality you possess, it can be incredibly rage-inducing. If you don't obtain the right mindset, it can not only have a negative effect on you as a player, but it can also diminish the enjoyment out of the fighting game that you were so heavily entranced by. So this can leave you with one of two results, okay? One, you give up on the game entirely and find a game that just doesn't come with any stress, like fucking Animal Crossing or some shit. Or two, you find yourself rage quitting from time to time due to just pure frustration. Now, before I continue to expound on this subject, I need to state this real quick. There are two types of rage quits. One being that a player will quit only due to pure frustration, which doesn't happen often. And the other being that the player simply refuses to take losses, which results in their rage quits becoming quite habitual. Now, if the second description relates to you, then feel free to exit this video because this video is just not intended for your sorry ass. Now, when you get into a fighting game, you might tell yourself that you actually want to get good at said fighting game, right? And half of the time, you don't understand the amount of effort that goes into being good at playing them. So when it comes to fighting games, it's crucial that you enable yourself to adopt the right mindset, because with that mindset, it'll allow you to improve exponentially in whatever game you're playing. Doesn't matter if you play Tekken, Street Fighter, MK, it doesn't matter. This mindset transfers to literally any and every game. And yes, if you'd like to take it a step further, you can apply this to life itself, because that is indeed the hardest game that we play on a daily basis. You may be asking yourself, okay, Kodo, so what is the right mindset? So look, you want to get good, but there's just times where your emotions simply just get the best of you and you just want to shut down. We all experience these kind of emotions, but it's up to you how you actually go about controlling them. You have to be calm, okay? You have to realize the very importance of what it means to take a loss in a fighting game. You learn far more from a loss than you do winning. Winning just provides you with a rush of dopamine. It doesn't necessarily help you improve as a player. When you keep this in mind, you'll have an easier time of going in every match being level-headed, since you understand the fact that, hey, this is only the beginning, okay? I'm still learning, and I will definitely become a far better player than what I am today. When you lose to a player, it's on you to figure out how you lost that match. Take the time to evaluate your gameplay, analyze your mistakes, and see what were the better options for you to take in those detrimental situations you were put in. When you actually take the time to do this, you'll witness significant results, and trust me, it'll encourage you to remain consistent with this mindset that you have now adopted. Be sure to surround yourself with like-minded individuals and start watching other content creators or pros that seem very humble and express little to no anger when they lose. There's a simple reason for that. It's because they understand why they've lost. There's no one to blame other than yourself when it comes to fighting games. You're held accountable, no one else. So being weak-minded and just blaming your losses on an opponent that may be utilizing gimmicks or what you deem to be a busted character, it does not matter. Because 9 times out of 10, you will always have options for a counter. My first fighting game that I ever learned was Street Fighter 5, okay? A good friend of mine, whom of which is my brother Sinju in Japan, had got me into traditional fighting games, and Street Fighter 5 being the first one.
I can't pull it off on this side. Damn. I got it. Okay. All right. Cool. I like that. Damn.
Now, I played fighting games growing up, but I never learned combos for anything because that shit just looked so intimidating back then, especially when it came to Mortal Kombat. Yeah, I was more into the Def Jam series, but I digress. I had made the transition from anime arena brawlers to traditional fighters, and Street Fighter V was the beginning of my FGC journey. I was enjoying the game so much as a newbie up until I actually started to learn the game. Granted, I didn't get to learn all too much, and you'll understand why in just a second here. This was a game that I enjoyed and just wanted to be good at, but I simply could not tolerate all the losing streaks that I was going on. So what would happen? I would become vexed. I would get incredibly frustrated to the point where I would rage quit. Didn't matter what round it was, I would just get mad at the fact that things were simply not working out for me and just feeling as if the game was working against me. So I'd quit. I'd get off the game for a bit, but I'd come back, and guess what? The same outcome would repeat itself. And before I knew it, I was confined within this repetitive cycle. Why? Because at this time, I was incredibly weak-minded. So it got to the point where I had to officially just drop the game because I ended up hating Street Fighter V with a passion. With how incredibly rage-inducing the game was, along with the lack of character variety that I was experiencing, I just found myself no longer enjoying the game. It took a while, but I had dropped the game entirely. I realized that maybe I was only enjoying it because I had a friend to play with in the beginning. I got so deep into this game, man, and Senju was just no longer interested, so I found myself playing alone from this day forward. For someone like myself that mainly plays alone these days, I tend to question if fighting games could be far more enjoyable if I always had a friend or maybe just a group of friends to play with consistently. And I believe so. And I also reckon that it could make the journey to becoming a better player a much more tolerable and ripping experience. So during my Street Fighter V days, there were times where, I dibble-dabbled into some Tekken 7. After I had completely given up hope on Street Fighter V, I decided to get heavily into Tekken 7.
Watch out now. Watch out now, okay?
Alright, it's time to get off the game.
A game that for whatever reason felt more natural to me and never really stressed me out. At least nothing like Street Fighter V, as to where that game would literally put me in a bad mood. This game was much more tolerable for me, but even then there were times where I would still become very irked and would just close the application. Now, if I had to make an educated guess on when these rage quits transpired, I would have to say red ranks, for the simple fact that this was the only time where I was showing genuine frustration. Now, although these rage quits weren't recurrent, karma still dealt with me, okay? One day, a fellow player by the name of Project Evan encountered me on ranked. It was my Miguel against his law. Now, back then, I didn't know that if you got off the game literally right after the player received their points, it would still disconnect. I thought the victory screen would continue on. So if I ever became heavily agitated on rank, I would hop off after they got the points and go about my day. This match with Evan had triggered me, so I left it that particular way. Come to find out days later, I see myself featured in a rage quit video made by no other than Project Evan himself. Now, I can't even recall how I felt about said video, but I remember looking into his channel afterwards and seeing that he had a video pertaining to rage quitting. And within this video, he was speaking on how irksome it is to encounter these kind of players, and being this way will just never help you improve as a player. Within this video, he also admitted to the fact that he used to do it himself in the beginning. But he woke the fuck up. And he came to the realization that, hey, this shit isn't it. I actually want to get good, so I need to put this shit to an end. It was honestly one of the most realest videos I had ever watched, and it did something to me, You always hear people bashing others for rage quitting, but you rarely ever hear anyone admit to have done it themselves. Like, this rage quitting is just taboo in the FGC. You rage quit, you're considered trash. The lowest of the low, and you'll always be frowned upon. Now, in my personal opinion, I don't feel like the usual derogatory comments and insults will change anything about a player. It's not up until you acknowledge the fact that you are trash. because all you're doing is holding yourself back from becoming the kind of player you aspire to be. Now, Project Evan had essentially broke the chains that were holding me back, and I found myself finally escaping from that repetitive cycle that I was confined in. I managed to have a genuine conversation with him, and you know, we became cool ever since. We even decided to have an FT5 after what had transpired between us. So, and yeah, those videos will be linked in the description, but I digress. Despite the fact that it wasn't necessarily a rage quit, I felt like it was karma for the legitimate rage quits that I did have on Tekken 7. And to this day, I am grateful that this man exposed me along with creating that impactful video, okay? Because if it wasn't for that wake-up call, I highly doubt that I would even be playing traditional fighters, because I wouldn't even be able to tolerate them nor enjoy them without the mindset that I currently have now. So I've never rage quit since then, because I know the loss was on me. It's all about adapting. That's what it all comes down to, adapt. If you find yourself in a match where you're becoming too infuriated, which can happen, because like to this day, I still can't tolerate Alyssa players. They're so bad, but the character is so gimmicky to the point I become too triggered, or perhaps too bored to even learn the matchup. So what do? I simply put the controller down. I put it down and I let them have the win. I will gladly take that L, okay? Now, is that considered weak? Of course, but it's much better as opposed to quitting on your opponent. Now, the reason I mention this is because I'm not perfect. There are times I still struggle, but the thing is, I never lose that positive mentality in knowing that I am accountable for all my losses, and I know I have the power to learn and adapt if I put the effort into it. This video was not only created with the intentions of helping out those who struggle with improving due to their fragile mindsets, but this is also a reminder to myself to stay on track. Because I ain't gonna lie to you, coach, Tekken 8 is one stressful ass game. But you know, if I could do it, so can you. Remember this: innovate, adapt, and overcome. Let's evolve together, man.